Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to week 7 in CU 122. Chef Suzanne and I welcome you to another fine live session. What a great week 6. We made it, and ladies and gents, we are officially in the second half of the course. Congratulations, everybody. That is awesome. We're really encouraged by the progress that we see that everybody has made. I noticed a bunch of people were posting on a social media website a bunch of our prior students that were just graduating. I guess they graduated 2 or 3 days ago, and it was so exciting to see their joy of that accomplishment and how they're calling themselves chefs now. And all of you are heading in that direction, and you're all going to be there soon. Just keep it strong for the second half of this course. It's real easy to slow down, but you know what? The learning never stops. So keep moving forward, everybody. Everybody in this class can do it, and I'm really excited to see our final results. Chef Suzanne, how was week 6 in CU 122?
Week 6 was good. I feel like this was the first time I've seen some struggles. And heard, because I feel like this is, I think baking is a little different for a lot of folks in culinary, because typically if you're loving the baking, you go into baking, right? So this week was a little bit of a struggle, and for a lot of folks, or being overwhelmed because it was so very different. But look at it like it's just another technique, right? So when you all did the hollandaise, you may have never done it before. Just another technique, just another something you've learned how to do. So don't let it be overwhelming, like, I'm not a baker. Well, I'm not a baker either, absolutely not. It is not my cup of tea, but I appreciate it, and I can absolutely do it. So just don't look at it as something difficult or scary, because y'all can do this, absolutely. But we did have some good stuff that I can show. So let's see. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so I like this little quote, passion for cooking starts with respect for the ingredients. And I actually thought that was very fitting for this week, seeing as we're dealing with baking, where it's all about having to appreciate that it's a science. Let's see if we can move on to the next one. I didn't want to forget, I only had one person send me pictures of hamburgers and hot dogs this week.
What happened?
I guess nobody wanted hamburgers or hot dogs or potato salad or anything this week. So I was a little disappointed, but it's okay.
So I know the tacos were so, that showed such great enthusiasm, especially before.
She did. Now for Alicia here, her before and after of her biscuits is phenomenal. So you can definitely see the GBD on the outside, and they've at least doubled in size. And I'm not even sure how she managed to get them almost in the exact same position the second time, when she's like before and after. It was just pretty amazing. Same here also, gorgeous on the outside, beautiful texture on the inside on these muffins.
Great job, Porsche.
Yes. And this here, I did throw a challenge out to some students, which was to make it look like it was at a continental breakfast buffet, to plate up their biscuits and muffins. So to say there were many that did not disappoint and just went all out with some continental breakfast.
I think we really need to compliment Joseph, most importantly, on his mise en place, because that is just beautifully laid out, quick, easy, efficient, and that's the way we do it in industry. So great job.
Yes, and I definitely thought the same thing about the mise en place. Same here with Nicole. Also, that absolutely amazing mise en place, not to mention her beautiful muffins and biscuits with a little jam on top, because everything's better with jam or bacon. Or bacon jam.
Bacon jam's the best.
Flippin' love bacon jam. All right, another one here, Sarah with her amazing presentation here.
Nice job.
Right?
Wow.
And Jalita took and made hers into like a little shortcake, and then she also made plain muffins, and then she also made some of the streusel topping, because streusel topping is amazing. And Scott also with his beautiful presentation. Wow. So right, they did. They had a lot of fun this week.
I think Scott, if you go back to Scott's real quick, So something I really like was the even disbursement of the blueberries in the muffin.
Yes.
So, I mean, they're evenly dispersed in there. You see a lot that sink to the bottom because they don't coat in flour or cornstarch first. And so that's a great job.
Yes, that's why I like that one too. And the color, just magnificent. But I know that there was folks that struggled and that just think, I just want to hang it up. And so I thought this was very fitting. When a child learns to walk and falls down 50 times, he never thinks to himself, maybe this isn't for me. I'm just going to quit trying to get up and walk. So just because you may have struggled or had issues this week with muffins and biscuits, don't let that, make you feel like you got knocked down. So what can you do about it? Look, I have a special slide this week, Chef. I didn't even tell you about these.
I love this.
Thank you. All right, so you had some issues. Your muffins were sad, your biscuits were wrong, your chicken's overcooked. It happens. Chef can agree. These things happen to the best of us. They happen. So take a deep breath. Don't freak out. What can you do? So do you have to do it again? So I burnt my biscuits, I burnt my muffins. Do I have to do it again? Well, no, you don't have to do anything, right? Chef and I are not gonna come to your house and knock on your door and make you make those muffins again. We're not gonna do that. But if you wanna get better at the technique, then yeah, you should probably do it again, if for nothing else, to make sure you're knowing that skill. But at the end of the day, some of you are going, but what about my grade, right? So you want that better grade. So should you redo the assignment? Well, the answer is maybe. Right? If you've got the time, so it's on a Sunday and you don't have to have anything turned in until Tuesday and you're sad about your muffins and biscuits, you've got the time, you've got the stuff to make more, absolutely. Try it again. Definitely going to encourage that. Hands-on is always going to be your best option. But what if you don't have the time or you don't have the resources? Well, that is where your narrative sheet comes in handy. So a lot of you hear me say this over and over again, make sure your narrative is complete. Your narrative helps me to give you better feedback, but it also broadens and expands your ability to talk about what happened. So a lot of you probably don't even pay a whole lot of attention in the narrative, and I'm going to show that here in just a second. Put in your narrative what happened, good or bad. So if your muffins came out wrong, but you know exactly what you did wrong, explain that, because that gives you credit for the assignment. So those of you thinking, well, I messed it up, I'm just going to get a failing grade on my muffins. No. So I will show you this on the next slide. This is exactly what your rubric looks like. So if you look in that green box on the end there, it says excellent production, right? So you could either prepare amazing biscuits and muffin this week, or your narrative reflects a deep understanding of opportunities for an excellent product, right? So what does that mean in that green box? It means either A, you did a great job and made them and they came out great, or you can explain how to do it better next time. Elaborate on what went wrong and what you can do better next time, right? So most people don't even pay attention to that box, right? So my tips for this week, look, Chef, I have a box of tips.
I love this.
I know, right? I did notice this a lot, and I can tell because I've seen enough of these. Don't forget to preheat your oven. So some of you have the saddest palace little biscuits this week because you forgot to preheat your oven. So they never really got brown, right? Easy to tell, isn't it, Chef? Your oven temperature. Most of our ovens are off. Even in commercial kitchens, they can be off 25 or 50 degrees. Check your oven. If you think your oven's at 350 and it's only at 300 and you put something in, it's probably not going to brown and cook correctly. So very important. Issue I saw this week, also measuring correctly. And Chef may want to talk about this also in a minute too. Issues with measuring. Make sure you are using your scale, your cups, your liquid, whatever it is you have to make sure you're measuring your items correctly. That makes a huge difference when you're dealing with baking and these chemical reactions. This next one, only post pictures that are required. Now, yes, if you're doing some of these little extra challenges, you want to throw in a picture of your dinner, I'm okay with that. But I don't need 11 photos of the same picture of your bowl of flour. Like here's your bowl of flour and here's your bowl of flour a half a second later and 3 seconds after that, right? But I do need the 16 or 18 pictures that you have to have. So that I look and go, well, we have 11 pictures of flour, but no picture of the inside of their biscuits. That's an important picture, right? So when, make sure you're double checking. Your mise en place, showed you some great photos of mise en place. Get it all measured out and get it in one picture. I don't need, here's a picture of your flour, here's a picture of your baking soda, here's a picture of your butter. It just means you have to take 1,000 pictures. Get it all done, boom, one picture. Beautiful. Like TV, like magic, right? Utilize your resources. Make sure you're watching the videos, doing the reading, the lessons, the live session. the knowledge checks. And don't forget, utilize Chef and I, your resources. We are here. We are a resource for you. And for anybody that I do give challenges to, they're just for fun. I don't want anybody stressing, going, oh my gosh, I can't do a continental breakfast. I don't know what that is. And that's fine. It's just for fun. I throw it out there sometimes. No worries. I don't want anybody losing any sleep over that. So there's my little speech for the day. So now I can.
That was a really cool soapbox. And it was filled with great information. Yeah. Some of the things that Chef Suzanne just talked about, I'd really like to reiterate. First of all, she talked about when something doesn't come out right. You have to remember the word fail, and we've talked about this before. The word fail stands for first attempt in learning, and those are the letters. And I have failed many, many times, and I'm sure Chef Suzanne has made things that didn't quite come out right. It's called mastery of the product or mastery of the technique. Sometimes it takes a couple of times, so be patient with yourself. And then something else that's real critical, we saw a great picture of it, was the mise en place. Mise en place, that's when you get OCD. When I go to turn the key at 5 o'clock at the restaurant, or when I go to do a demonstration at a hotel or something like that, when that demonstration starts, I am big time OCD. I have my towels folded. I have everything laid out and portioned in cups. All of my utensils are within easy reach. Think it through, people. You'll save yourself a lot of time in the future. So OCD with your mise en place. It's very, very important. And then third and most important when it comes to baking is your ability to measure. And I know we're all adults here, and it seems quite simplistic. Just because you scoop your measuring cup inside your bag of flour, that doesn't mean it's a cup. You have to tap it to get the air bubbles out. You have to level it off to create 1 cup. So 1 cup in a recipe when it comes to baking is not slightly mounded, not with divots in it. It is 1 cup. And you have to be OCD with your measurements. It's the same thing with teaspoons, tablespoons, and everything else. It can't be mounded up or anything else like that. So I think we ran into a couple of problems this week with measuring. And it is a great exercise in learning and the value of it all. Chef Suzanne talked about the oven. It is critical to preheat your oven. That's why we tell you to sit down on Friday, read the recipe, have a complete understanding of it before you even start, and make sure that you follow the steps. All of the recipes that we provide for you, they're all well tested, so it's not the recipe that's malfunctioning. You really have to pay very close attention, and I think everybody did a fantastic job, but at the same time, we can always do a little bit better. So let's hang in there. Chef Suzanne, do you have something else to add to that?
I was just going to kind of jump on the end of that. That even if you had struggles this week, and you had struggles this week, it's okay. This is probably brand new stuff for a lot of people, and it can be very challenging. And that's why, don't give up. Don't be frustrated. Just take a deep breath, take a step back. What did you learn? Can you do it again? Should you do it again? You ready to do it again? Just there are options. Don't get overwhelmed and frustrated like, well, this isn't for me. I can't do this. I can't make muffins. I'm done. I don't want to cook anymore ever again. No, just back up, muffin later at another later date and time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Culinary arts or being a chef, it's a lot like climbing a staircase. And I remember when I took that first step up, I was like, I cannot do this. It's not me. It ain't going to happen. And I burned things. I tried to bake breads. They came out flat. I started a fire. I caused disaster. But you know what? I kept climbing up that ladder. And the higher I got, the better I got. And I finally got to the point where I spent more than 20 years as an executive chef, 10 years as a director of food and beverage, overlooking the entire thing. You just got to keep climbing those steps and don't give up, 1 foot in front of the other. Everybody can do it. It's very, very possible. Ladies and gents, let's take a look at our week here and see what we got going on.
We do have a hand up, Chef. William Jackson has his hand up.
What's up?
Yeah, I was doing the biscuits, and I realized when I was done, they came out really dense, and I totally forgot to sift them. And
Oh, yeah.
I think that was the main problem. They came out cookie style.
Well,
Yeah, they were really dense.
yeah.
But I did my research, and I did it, and I made those muffins beautiful. My
Yeah.
wife ate like 3 of them. My daughter loves them. And they were nice and fluffy because I fluffed them and sifted them. So that was my mistake on the other part. So, and
William,
you
you're
live
going to be a
and learn,
good
right?
chef. You know why you're going to be a good chef is because I can tell that you like to make people happy with your food. When you were talking about your wife and your daughter, you had a big smile on your face, and being a chef is really making other people happy. So, uh,
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, live and learn, right?
you know what? That's the right attitude, and it's experience makes a good chef, and
Yeah.
there's no book that you can really read that's going to turn you into a fantastic
No,
executive.
you gotta have at hands.
Yep. And it took me a couple of years in the kitchen of slicing and dicing and learning. And you, William, also mentioned something I think that's really, really critical to everybody, especially when it comes to baking, is attention to detail with the recipes and having a complete understanding of what you're doing before you even start. We recommend that you always line your mise en place out, right? And if you would have lined your mise en place out properly, you would have made sure you had your leavening agent in there, you would have had your sifter there, your colander, whatever you're using, so you would have had all your equipment right there. And it's learning those little steps that are so valuable. So great job, William. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yep. All right, ladies and gents. Anybody else have a question? Let's move on. All right, ladies and gents. Great job. We're officially in the second half of this course. It is critical that everybody hang tight, get through it. We cannot slow down. That's where you're going to start losing a lot of information. We want to see our on-time submissions at 100%. We got a little bit slack this week. Everybody, get your assignments done on Sunday. Get them in. Please maintain your attendance for the next couple of weeks, the last 5 weeks of this course. Critical. Those who maintain their attendance, especially in this stretch of the course, are the ones that succeed each and every time. And then most importantly, for the next couple of weeks, Chef Suzanne and I request, please do not deviate from the recipes under any circumstances. The reason for that is we're really, really concerned about the techniques coming up on the next recipes. And like we were talking about, William brought up, I had this issue, or we've heard other issues that popped up as well. We're really focused on everyone learning those techniques. So when you're in industry and you're actually out there, you've got those little bugs worked out first. So really focus on the techniques for the next couple of weeks. It's very, very important. Chef Suzanne, you have anything to add to that?
Nope. I believe they are good to go. I just wanted to try and alleviate some of the concerns, because I know this week was our first jump into the baking. Pancakes, a little close, but this was, there was a lot going on, and I know this could be a little intimidating and stressful, and it's okay. It's okay.
Yep. You know why it's okay? Been there, done that. Been down this road myself, and I know Chef Suzanne has as well. And the more you keep at it, the more you take the advice and listen and follow the direction, the better things are going to get. So, ladies and gents, I love this little saying right here. An apron is just a cape on backwards. And that is so true, because each and every one of you out there is a superhero, and it's really going to pay off in the future. And this little fellow, who's this little fellow, Chef Suzanne?
Come on now, Chef. Tell me that's Cookie Monster.
That's it. He seems to be a constant theme throughout the slides tonight. Do you know anything about that?
I don't have a clue what happened there. I don't know.
All right, ladies and gents, week 7, moving forward. Let's take a look at what we got on the board. Make sure you really watch these research materials. There's some really good videos in there. And we're really going to be harping on the creaming method that we're going to talk a little bit about here in a few minutes. And in the research materials, they get heavily into the creaming method. 2 knowledge checks this week. Make sure that you understand you can take those knowledge checks as many times as you like, and only the highest score is going to stick. Thank you, everybody, for being here at the live session. And then this week in the kitchen, we are working on cookies. It sounds simple, but it is a very important technique to learn. That creamy technique is extremely important. And then the flaky pie dough. We are not cooking our pie dough this week, and we are not making pies. We are making pie dough. And then Wednesday, thank you everybody for attending the live session. If you're not, make sure you watch that live session archive. Sit down tomorrow and read your research materials, complete both knowledge checks. 15 minutes, boom, you got attendance posted, you're set. And then on Friday, sit down and read the assignment and the recipes, create a prep list, timeline, and purchase mise en place. If you have any questions for either Chef Suzanne or I, that's a great time to ask, because Friday we are available. Prepare and complete assignment. Check to ensure that assignment is correct and submit. And then make any changes as recommended by Chef Suzanne on Monday and Tuesday and resubmit. Make breakfast for dinner this week. Why? Because why not? Any day. Yes, whoever wrote that obviously has a thing for breakfast.
And you cannot go wrong with breakfast for dinner. And I feel like we just did what? Muffins, pancakes, omelets. I feel like this is a perfect opportunity to knock out some breakfast for dinner.
I'd love to see some omelets in next week's presentation, or eggs Benedict, or.
Man, I'm telling you, Chef, I don't even know. I'm ready. I'm going to make breakfast for dinner this week, because that's a huge hit with my family, because we don't do that very often.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, that's cool. Good suggestion. Ladies and gentlemen, in the weekly presentation, which is located directly beneath the research materials on the class page for your convenience, you can pull this presentation up at any point in time to look at it. You have your conversions chart right here, which will easily help you through this week's knowledge check. All right, ladies and gents, when we get into the kitchen, we are going to be working with some different equipment. And so we've put together a little slide that'll show you some of the equipment that you'll be looking for once you're in industry to help you complete this assignment. Now, right here in the center, we've talked about parchment paper before in this class. We also call that pan liner. But we're kind of moving, the industry is kind of moving as a whole in a little bit more of a modern direction, and they're using a lot of what they call silk mats or silicone mats. And basically what they are is non-stick, reusable parchment paper, so to speak. And so I love to bake on these. I have quite a few of them myself. So they're great for making cookies or any other thing that you would put onto a piece of parchment paper. Sheet pans, you will see a lot of these when you are in industry. They come in full, half, and quarter sizes. Most restaurants have 30, 40, 50, 60 of them. So they are very, very common. So I worked at, I ran a DoubleTree hotel for years, and we used to bake 15,000 cookies a month. And so can you imagine how many sheet pans that was? That was quite a few. And then this is a table mixer, a counter mixer, like they're called. And this week, you'll be working with the paddle attachment, not the dough hook and not a whisk, but the paddle attachment. So you want to keep that in mind if you are going to use a mixer. Small scoop to portion cookies, scoops in the kitchen. Big business, people. You know, the scoops are determined, the size of a scoop is determined by its color of handle. So when you go into the kitchen, you will notice that they have purple scoops, green scoops, gray scoops, black scoops, and that color of that handle is designed so when you run in there, you reach, you can grab the right size scoop very quickly. We think about speed continuously in the kitchen. And then measuring cups. Quite frequently, these are designed for liquid measurements. Right down here, parchment paper like we talked about, and a paddle. And then here we go, Cookie Monster. Here he is, Cookie Sheet. See what I see here. So he is back. Yes. Any questions about the equipment we use? Denise?
Yes, when I was reading the research materials, it mentioned the number of the scoops, 30 being the larger, being 30 grams, but then 40, 50, 60 being smaller. What is the actual volume of those?
That's a good question, because everything, that's a really intelligent question. And the reason that's an intelligent question is everything in bakeries is generally done by weight. That's why they're giving you that information in grams. So to determine the actual volume can be difficult. So there is a conversion, and I know you can Google it. I can't tell you it right off the top of my head, but like a black number 4 scoop will yield 2-ounce cookies, for example. So
I think they're based, Chef, on scoops in a quart.
Scoops in a quart, which is absolutely correct.
Okay.
To determine, yeah, that's right. So
Perfect. Thank you.
yes. Great answer. Yeah. All right, ladies and gents, back on pastry flour. This week, if you're having a hard time finding pastry flour, you can use cake flour. I know we had quite a few questions last week regarding pastry flour. We talked about it a little bit last week, but if you are having a hard time finding pastry flour, you can use cake flour. So in a worst case scenario, you can substitute all-purpose flour, but be very, very conscientious when you are baking or mixing the product, because you will overdevelop the glutens. Remember, there are 2 proteins found in flour. One is glutenin, the other one is glutenine. And when you over mix those with water, you develop very tough strands of protein, and you don't want to have a tough, chewy cookie. William, what's your question?
I bought wheat, on the wheat for flour for that, and is that good? Or
Well, all flour is wheat, but as long as it's not whole wheat flour.
I think that a lot of folks were able to find over in like the Bob's Red or Mill Flour or whatever,
Bob, that's what I got.
Flour, but it's whole wheat. So it is different. It is.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but would that deflect it better? Is it worse or not?
You would probably be better off just using regular all-purpose flour.
Really?
Versus because there's going to be more protein in it, and it's going to be a lot more dense because it's whole wheat. I mean, yes, it's considered pastry flour, but it's whole wheat, so there's more. Well, Chef's going to talk here a little bit more about flours, but it's going to be a little stronger protein-wise. So you'd almost be better just subbing and just using all-purpose flour versus the whole wheat pastry. Would you agree, Chef?
Yeah. I agree 100%.
But I figured that's what you use, because I saw that a lot this week, because a lot of you, it looked like you had little speckles in your muffins and biscuits, and I was like, aha, they use some of that Bob's Red Mill, whatever, whole wheat pastry flour. I knew exactly what it was. I have it in my cupboard. I totally get it.
Yeah. Does that answer your question, William?
Yes, it is. And plus, I didn't sift it. That was my big problem with the biscuits. That's why they came out cookie-like. But yes, I thank you for everything.
Sift.
Yeah, sift without sift. That's great.
All right, ladies. Thanks, William. I want to kind of point out a couple of things right here. These pictures down here in the bottom. We're going to talk about creaming method here in just a little bit. And oftentimes people kind of struggle with the creaming method, and it's just a matter of following directions to get it proper. And following the hints and techniques that you're going to pick up here in a few minutes. But if your cookies come out flat and they don't hold structure, that generally has to do with the creaming method gone wrong. And because your sugars do not properly incorporate and dissolve within the fat of the butter. And so they have a tendency to spread out and become very flat, and they do not leaven as we do. And over here on the right-hand side of the screen, we see the Cookie Monster. Right, he's coming down right here, and he is surrounded by some fantastic looking cookies that were properly creamed. And when we say creaming method, we were talking about starting with the butter and the sugar in the bowl and creaming them literally together until you have a nice creamy, smooth substance, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. Ladies and gents, just as a quick reminder, last week we discussed this, but cake and pastry flour, just so when you're out shopping, it can kind of help you answer your own questions. And especially once you become a chef and you're doing ordering and purchasing, it's really important to understand the difference between these flours. And it's not the label on the bag. And a lot of people think, oh, that cake flour is just ground finer than regular flour. That's why we do this. And that's not the case. Remember, cake and pastry flour has right around 9% protein. So it's going to develop a small amount of gluten when mixed with water and kneaded. However, the more you mix it and the more you knead it, the more gluten you will develop. So you have to be careful with cake and pastry flour as well. All-purpose flour, you're getting in the 9 or the 10, 11% range for the protein levels. So you are going to develop additional glutens in there when mixing. So we talked a moment ago that this week, if you're unable to find that cake or pastry flour, you could substitute the all-purpose flour. However, it is critical that you do not over mix the product. Otherwise, you're going to have very tough and chewy cookies. And then bread flour, folks, stay away from it unless you're making bread. And it has about 12% protein in it. And that is because bread requires a lot of structure to hold the carbon dioxide and the alcohol when given off by the yeast. So very, very important. Once again, this information is on your class page if you need to refer back to it. Any questions about flour, ladies and gents? No? All right, ladies and gents, let's talk creaming method. And I know Chef Suzanne's going to have a little bit of feedback in this area. And it's really, really important to follow the simple steps. This is a recipe. I know it's cookies. We've all seen grandma make cookies a million times, and they seem so simplistic to make. But when the 90% of the problem is when people do not do the creaming method. So you are going to take the following steps. Just to back up a little bit, the creaming method, it gets its name because it's the first step of making a cookie, and that's where the butter and the sugar is creamed together. You know, you're going to start with your butter in your mixer. You're going to add your sugar and with your paddle and allow it to mix for several minutes until it becomes a smooth, creamy substance, and the majority of that sugar has been dissolved into that. It's going to help lighten, and it's also going to allow those cookies to leaven much, much better. We've all had flat cookies before. They're just not fun. There's something, I don't know what it is. They're just not good. So we want to have nice volume in our cookies. Make sure that this week you scale your ingredients accurately. When we say scale your ingredients, we're also saying measuring your ingredients. Scoop your flour out with your 1 cup measure. Tap it so you get all the air bubbles out. Level it off so it becomes 1 level cup instead of estimating or having a little mound or something like that. Baking is an exact science. It's very, very important.
Hey, Chef.
Yes.
I would jump in real quick.
Sure.
This week, it gets even a little more interesting because for those of you that maybe haven't looked at the recipes yet, this week you're actually using grams. So you're all going to get very familiar with adjusting your scales to grams instead of ounces and pounds. So you can, for most of this, you'll use your, actually I think all of it, you'll be able to use your scales this week, but you're going to have to, and because we normally get bombarded with a whole lot of, I don't know how many grams are in an ounce and how many, you know, that's cool. You can definitely convert it, not a bad thing to learn how to do, or you can hit the little button on your scale so that you can start measuring in grams, which will make your life much easier.
Yep. Excellent. That is absolutely true. And just to go back to the scoop part real quick, I just put the information on the determination of the actual scoop size into the chat, so everybody can have that for easy access. Because Chef Suzanne has a tendency to say things much more simplistic than I do sometimes, and so so I had to make sure that everybody understood. All right, ladies and gents, so after you've scaled out your ingredients, and like I said, when we talk about scale, we're talking about measuring your ingredients out properly. Then you're going to place your fat, sugar, salt, and spices into the mixing bowl. And when we say fat in the restaurant industry or the culinary industry, it can mean a lot of different things. I believe this week our fat is whole butter. And then you're going to begin mixing those ingredients at low speed for several minutes. For light cookies, you can actually turn that up because you can incorporate additional air into that mixture. You know that mixture is almost done because number one, it's smooth and creamy, but the color is also going to change on the butter because as the oxygen gets introduced into the butter, it becomes lighter and smoother and more silky looking, and that's what you're looking for. Do not underestimate. Also, during this process, let your mixer run for a minute or two and then stop. And it's called scraping the bowl down. You're going to get a plastic spatula. You're going to scrape it down. You're going to make sure there's no chunks of butter that are left on your paddle. Nothing is stuck to the bottom of the bowl. Scrape it up and then turn it on and continue for another moment or two. Once your butter has reached that smooth, creamy, silky stage, it's lightened in color. You don't see any more granules of sugar in there. You are then going to start adding eggs, one at a time until incorporated. Does that make sense, Chef Suzanne?
It does, and I'm actually glad you're kind of going over that because there's a really good question in the chat that I was actually going to answer here in a second, but you're kind of stepping into it already, asking, can we use stand mixers? And this is where I see the stand mixer, like, yes, I have a stand mixer, I can take it out, I'm so excited. But be very cautious with your stand mixer. My advice is if something has flour in it, once you add flour, you should not be using your stand mixer anymore. It's like when like Chef's talking about your butter and your cream and all that, and you're getting those eggs in, you can use that stand mixer. But once it's time to add flour and your chocolate chips or whatever it is, you want to back off on that because like Chef was just talking about, you don't want those gluten strands. So can you use your stand mixer? Yes and no at the same time.
You need to proceed with caution when doing so. I used to teach at a school and we had 40 KitchenAid mixers going at the same time and people would cream everything out and they're like, great job. And then they add their flour and everything else and they walk away. And 10 minutes later, the machine's still going and you could use it as a weapon, when the cookie dough comes out. So absolutely with what Chef Suzanne is saying, cream it out in your mixer. Then pull your bowl off your mixer, incorporate your flour and chocolate chips by hand because you just want to bring those together and that's it. You do not want to overdevelop. Going back to the eggs real quick, you've creamed your sugar, your butter, your salt, and your spices together. Then you're going to add your eggs one at a time until they are thoroughly incorporated. Add an egg, thoroughly incorporate. Add an egg, thoroughly incorporate. Very, very important. And then you can add your vanilla extract if you choose to do so. You've already sifted out your flour and your leavening agent, and then you can mix that until just combined, and you will have amazing cookies. Absolutely amazing. Anything else to add to that, Chef Suzanne?
Nope, we got another good question. If they don't have a stand mixer, can you use a hand mixer? Absolutely. You can also use your hand and a whisk. Right? Because not everybody has a stand mixer. Not everybody has, sorry, my kitten is driving me crazy here. If you don't have a stand mixer, you don't have a hand mixer, a whisk in your hand will work to cream that butter. It'll take a little longer and build up a little muscles up there, but it'll work.
Yep.
You don't have to run out and buy a new one. You can if you need one, but you don't have to.
Popeye was a cook. I know that for sure. I've seen those arms. Yeah. All right, ladies and gents. So you've made your cookie dough. And that's good to go. But another really critical part is getting the pan and the oven ready. We talked about this at the beginning of the class. Make sure you properly preheat that oven because a cold oven will force those cookies to spread wide. And you don't want that to happen. So make sure that your oven is properly preheated. Make sure that the pans that you're going to be using for this week's assignment aren't warped. A lot of pans at home have that tendency to get that curve, kind of like shape type thing to it. You want to make sure that you have a nice flat surface. And then you're going to line it with parchment paper or a silk mat like we showed you here a few moments ago. Parchment paper works perfectly fine. And then I don't like greasing the pans. So to speak, because I think what happens if you over grease the pan, that it's removing all the friction, so the cookie just goes like that. So if it's lightly greased, you can take a towel and just kind of rub it back and forth, and that's it. Just a very, very light sheen. It doesn't really need any more than that. Very, very important. And then you want to make sure that when the cookies bake at a relatively higher temperature in general when making cookies, too low of a temperature like we just talked about will allow the cookie to spread very thin, and it'll also create a very hard cookie at the same time. So step one, turn that oven on, everybody. Get it nice and hot and ready to go, and make sure that happens. And then one of the biggest mistakes that people make when it comes to cookies is they wait till they're completely done before they pull them out. And we don't like that, because cookies are very, very susceptible to carry over cooking. What that means, there are a lot of things in the world of culinary arts that are susceptible to carry over cooking. Eggs are a primary example of that. Once they get to that cooking temperature, they hold on to it. Even though you've taken it out of the oven and you've put it onto a rack, they're still cooking and they're still going. So you have to be able to judge that cookie. You want to pull it out a moment or two before that cookie's actually done. Pull it out and then put it onto your cooling rack, preferably a cooling rack. And then that cookie will finish itself up right on the money. Anything to add to that, Chef Suzanne?
I do. I always try to kind of rephrase sometimes. Chef and I just spend all day long rephrasing each other. So when it comes to those cookies, if you think that they're not quite done yet, they're probably done.
Yep.
So what you're looking for is the edges are just going to start to turn a light golden brown, and the center is going to be dry. But if you look at that cookie and open up the oven and go, oh, it looks perfect, it's probably overdone, because by the time it cools out of the oven, it's going to be overcooked. So when you look at it and you're like, I think it's almost done, it's probably done. Take it out.
Yep, absolutely right on the money. And in industry, if I was to go to Chef Suzanne and Chef Suzanne was to say, how do you want the cookies on the sheet pan? And I looked at her and I said, I want them 6 by 6, or I want them 6 by 5. She would know exactly what I'm talking about. Because in industry, we put the same number of cookies or other items on each sheet pan. So when things come out of the oven, instead of counting the items, we're able to count the sheet pans. When you lay cookies out, it's very important that they are spaced out at least 2 inches apart, because the cookies are going to spread. So we really can't tell you exactly. It's probably going to be about 3 by 4 or 3 by 6. So that would be 3 across and then 6 down. So it's kind of hard to tell. But get yourself in the habit of doing the same thing on a repetitious basis, because once you're in industry, if you have to cook 500 cookies and you have every single sheet pan with a different amount on there, you're not going to be happy, because you're going to be counting for a long time. Or if you do each sheet pan exactly the same, you just have to count the sheet pans and you'll be done quickly. Isn't that right, Chef Suzanne?
Absolutely. I mean, I've never done the volume of cookies you have, but absolutely, it's a whole lot easier to just look and go, okay, let's see, there's 30 on a sheet pan, and just count out the sheet pans and have to count every single pan because they're all different amounts.
Yeah.
And what, okay, if you only have to count to 100, but if you have to count to 3,000, that's a lot of cookies to count when you just count the pans.
Right. And then we build upon that as well. So for example, if I'm doing a banquet for 500 people and I need dinner salads, right? So I'm going to have my pantry cooks put the same amount of dinner salads on each sheet pan, and then I'll have them put the same amount of sheet pans on each speed rack. So then I know that there's 120 salads per speed rack, and then I just divide 120 into 500. That tells me how many speed racks I need. So instead of having to count every salad to make sure it's all there, I just go 1, 2, 3, 4, and a partial, and I'm set, and I know. So that's the way we like to organize ourselves in industry. It's very important. It's a lot about time. Time. Any questions about the creaming method, ladies and gentlemen? Oh, good, solid. All right, ladies and gents. There is a video here. We're not going to show this video. I think everybody needs to take a few minutes to watch it. It's very, very important. And there's Cookie Monster right there. He's looking good. So this is also in your research materials and on the weekly presentation, and it will take you through the actual creaming method. It's very, very important. Next, we're going to switch our mind over to flaky pie dough, or pie crust, as some people will call it. I always like to think about it as a mille-feuille. A mille-feuille is a very classic French dessert, which means 1,000 layers. And you know, puff pastry is a series of layers. Good pie dough is a series of layers. So what that tells me is you need to be really conscientious about the mixing process this week. So let's take a quick look at this video right here. That's going to kind of walk you through. There we go.
Sweet and savory applications. In pastry, it's obviously used for pies, but it's also utilized for lemon bars, turnovers, and anything else you can wrap in dough.
Quiche.
It also has its savory uses like chicken pot pie and spinach turnovers. The process for making pie dough is simple and easy, and can even be done by machine if you're making it in bulk. Before you begin to make the dough, gather your ingredients and put them all in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes. It may seem strange, but this will ensure that the dough will stay cool during the mixing process. After your mise en place has cooled, pour the flour and salt into a large bowl. Whisking the flour and the salt together just to make sure it's evenly incorporated. We've got our cold butter in small pieces. We're just going to break it up. Again, about the size of a hazelnut, but coating that cold butter in the flour. This is really what's going to make the pie dough flaky. Create a well in the center. And the ice water goes in. You don't need the ice cubes, so hold those back.
Ice water, very, very important. Not ice, but ice water.
You can hold off on some of the water too, in case you don't need it all. So again, just scraping around the side of the bowl and inward. This helps make sure that nothing gets missed on the bottom of the bowl or around the sides of the bowl. We have a pretty shaggy dough right now, which is good. We'll just turn it out onto our bench. Just work it by hand briefly. It's okay for the dough to stick a little bit. You don't want to add so much water that it ends up sticking to the bench or looking soupy. Just press it into a more even rectangle.
Chunks of butter.
Still add a little bit more water. Pie dough's pretty forgiving, as a matter of fact, so it's not too late. If you find that you made it and you didn't add enough water at the beginning, when you go to roll it out, you can absolutely add just a small amount of ice water at a time until you get the desired consistency. And then we're going to cover it in plastic wrap tightly. The main reason for wrapping it in plastic wrap, and I wrap mine twice, is you want to keep the air from getting at your pie dough. Air will dry it out, and your pie dough actually might look a little grayish. So we don't want that. So we're just keep the air from hitting it. And then we do want to let it rest. 4 hours or overnight is ideal because we want the gluten to rest. If you try to roll out pie dough right after you make it, the gluten is going to, you're going to roll it out and it's going to snap back at you. It's almost like a rubber band. It's not going to cooperate. So by allowing it to rest for 4 hours overnight, the gluten has a chance to relax. It'll be much more easy to work with. If you have to make the pie the same day, just allow 4 hours for it to rest. Otherwise, it's just as good to use the next day. Now that the dough is wrapped, we're going to allow it to rest for at least 4 hours. Pie dough should be kept in the fridge or freezer until you're ready to use it. If you want to use it within a couple of days, put it in the fridge. Otherwise, freeze it. If you do freeze it, be sure to slowly thaw the dough by putting it into the refrigerator versus straight into room temperature. Compared to other doughs, pie dough is a...
All right, that's enough of that. So a couple of the very, very important things that we just saw. Number one, all ingredients cool. You don't, nothing warm. She chilled all the ingredients. It's a very critical step in the actual pie dough making process. Number two, we didn't sift this week. We don't have to worry about sifting. It's not required because you're not trying to incorporate a lot of air into the product. So be conscientious of that. Number three, she used ice water, and you have to make sure you use ice water because otherwise that butter is going to kind of spread itself out and you don't want it. You notice she had chunks of butter in there. It's very, very important. And then number four, when she rolled it out onto the cutting board, she just barely brought it together, and that was it. Minimal amount of working. The more you work it, the less flaky it's going to be, and the more glutens you're going to develop, and the tougher your pie crust is going to be. Minimal work. And then make sure that you wrap it. I like to wrap it twice as well. That wrapping and resting process is extremely critical with pie dough. You notice there were some time, right? She said a rest for at least 4 hours in a refrigerator. Critical time for that pie dough. And then you have to bring it out. You have to let it warm. You have to let it warm up in order to finish it. So next weekend, when you're working on this pie crust, you're going to have to make sure that you allot yourself plenty of time to do so. Chef Suzanne, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes. And Chef actually mentioned this, but I'll kind of go one step further. When it comes to adding your ice water, just the water. Keep out the ice cubes, because I have some students that will just kind of dump it all in and ice and water, and you just want that cold water. Just kind of strain out the cubes. The cubes are just there to keep it super, super cold.
Yep, absolutely. Right on the money. Great suggestion. Ladies and gents, let's review our recipes real quick before we wrap up our week 7 live session here real quick. Chocolate chip cookies. We talked about the creaming method and the value and the importance of that. Make sure that you watch the video and the research materials. Make sure that you review this PowerPoint before you actually do the recipe. It's going to help you succeed. We don't want to see any flat spread out cookies this week. We want to see nice cookies like these right here in the middle are beautiful cookies. They've leavened and they have nice shape. We also talked about the fact that we need to pull them out of the oven a couple minutes before we think they're done, because if you wait till they're completely done in the oven, you're going to have rocks. Chef Suzanne will be able to know that they're rocks by looking at the picture. She's very talented in that area. So make sure that you pull them out a few minutes early. We like to cool them on racks as well. So we're going to cream our butter and our sugars together, and our salt, cream it, nice, light, airy. A couple of minutes, we're going to scrape our bowl down, then we're going to cream it a little bit more. And then we want to get rid of the mixer. We want to do the remainder of this by hand. Then you can get those eggs worked in, vanilla extract. Make sure 1 egg at a time, thoroughly worked in. Then the next egg. Vanilla extract, very, very important after the eggs. And then cake flour, pastry flour, or if you can't find any of those, then do all-purpose flour, then baking soda, chocolate chips, and good to go. Does anybody have any questions about chocolate chip cookies?
We do have a couple questions more about pie dough, and I just know they're good questions, so I know they'd be great to have in the live session archive. So we rest in the fridge for 4 hours and then move the crust to the freezer, or can they put it straight into the freezer?
Straight into the freezer is perfectly fine. Yep, no problem.
And then William has how long, but I'm not sure how long, what that meant. How long to freeze or how long to thaw? You there, William?
If you're going to let it thaw, pull it out, put it in your refrigerator the day before, let it thaw out overnight in your refrigerator. If you are going from your refrigerator to your work surface, it needs at least 10, 20, 30 minutes, depending on how warm your room is, to get itself back up to a workable consistency. Any other questions about that? All right, ladies and gents, let's take a quick look. Flaky pie dough right here. We have our AP flour. Remember, we don't sift. We put the AP flour and salt into a bowl. Chilled butter, cut into cubes. Make sure your cubes are consistent in size, about a ½ inch. So you're going to put your cubes of butter in there, and then your ice water, not ice, but ice water. No ice, very, very important. Just water. Make sure it's a properly measured amount, and then you're going to lightly toss that, work it a little bit till you get to like that hazelnut type consistency, chopped hazelnuts. And then you're going to put it out on your cutting board, and you're going to work it just a little bit. Plastic wrap. Your refrigerator is perfectly fine for that. Any other questions about pie dough? All right, ladies and gents, let's take a quick look at our week 7 assignment. Here's your rubric. Make sure you focus on that narrative this week. Very, very important, especially when it comes to learning to describe baked items, because now that we're into the baking part of the class, we are thinking about new terms and definitions. And then self-identification photos are very, very critical. It's the first representation of yourself. When you get into industry, you want to look professional. It's very, very important. Mise en place. Don't forget our little talk about OCD when it comes to mise en place. You'll save yourself in the long run. And then here we have each of the requirements for each recipe. And then there's a picture here at the very end I'd like to share with everybody. Very, very important. I'm into fitness. Fitness cookie into my mouth. I love that. That is so cool. And I'm really excited to see all the fantastic cookies this week. And hopefully Chef Suzanne has put a little challenge out there to everybody about making breakfast for dinner. I'd love to see some breakfast items, because you can never practice too much about the things that we've learned, especially the egg cookery and the omelets and everything else. So the more you practice, the better you're going to be. Any other questions, ladies and gents? I hope everybody has a fantastic week. Thank you all for a great live session. Make sure you reach out, you let us know. Make sure you post attendance. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.